All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for today's episode. It has been a journey. It has been a journey, and today has been a day too. But with that being said, I just want to thank you all for your support, all that you guys have done, to aid in me being able to do this and keep this platform going. Truly, truly could not do this without you all. And I know y'all probably would get tired. He always thanking us and all this other stuff. We don't even do that. Yeah, you guys do a lot, from your words of encouragement, from you guys just simply liking or sharing, or I get a lot of people just in those days, and they don't even know it, in those days where I'm like, why am I still doing this? And all this other stuff. Somebody comes out of the blue and says something really kind, and it's really encouraging. So thank you guys for all that you guys do. And also a special thanks to the people who have been guests on this show, because I truly could not have done this without you guys being here and sharing your stories and your experience and what you guys got going on. With that being said, I was told not too long ago I should be introducing myself, because some people may not know who I am, which is funny to me because I'm like, how did they stumble across this podcast? But with that being said, my name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. I've done 10 years plus with experience in and around the child welfare system, doing things from working in congregate care, working corrections, doing a little bit of social work, peer support, policy and programming work, you name it. Since now, so that's a little bit of my life. That's what I lead. That's why I'm doing this. I'm really passionate. Ever since I've aged out, I've been in this arena and trying to make it better. With that being said, because you guys know I can talk a lot, I'm going to pass it to my guest to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Darr. I am honored to be on your show today. Thank you for having me. So I came across Michael at our former peer support training through River Jordan, and I have really been blessed to listen to your podcast. So thank you for having me. So I'm right now, formally, I'm a director of a preschool, transitioning over to be a teacher for children with special needs here in the near future. I've been in early childhood education since 99 is when I started going to college for early childhood education, but I had a daughter at 16. So I've been in the early childhood education field for 24 years now. Let's see. So I am former foster youth with a passion to help current and former foster youth be able to reach their goals that they set for themselves in life, whether it's to work, in everyday life, whatever they may do, or they want to get their PhD. I want them to know that they can reach every single goal, no matter what road they're walking down. They are their only challenge. And I know sometimes these students just really need somebody, well, not students, sorry, foster youth need somebody to believe in them. And that's my goal. My passion comes from growing up in the system. I started in the foster system around the age of 1. My mom abandoned me with my aunt and went from there to going into a court battle when my mom decided she wanted me back. At that point, my aunt was trying to adopt me to get me out of the system. And, you have to send out so much information. And that brought my dad out from New York to California. And then also my great aunt and my mom. Long story short, by the time I was 4 or 5, my mom got me back. The system can give parents chances, which I think needs to be done, but also they're a little too faithful in a situation. And that's what happened in my case. My mom ended up getting married and was pregnant with my brother. And so things looked better. And so the judge said, she needed another chance. By the time I was 6, I was in foster care again. And this, between the ages of 6 and I would say 5 and 6, because I think she got me back by the time I was 6. It's kind of blurry. There was a lot of foster homes, and there was a lot of kinship placement and in and out of care. Um, I was in care because of physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, and also sexual abuse by my stepfather, who my mom had married. And so I had a lot going on. They ended up putting me in a group home, Hillview group home. And for 2 years, I knew what it was to have a family. I have the unique experience, because I know group homes can be hard. I have the unique experience of being in a Christian group home, and they loved on me as if I was their daughter. And that was probably the only time I got a normal childhood in the early ages of development. By the time I was 10, my mom was trying to get me back, so they moved me in to a group home. Moved me away from the group home and moved me into a foster home, because they felt that I needed to know what a placement would be in a real family. And that wasn't the greatest experience. I went through abuse in that group home. And then my mom got me back, and things went downhill again. She got back with my stepfather after moving us in and out of state during her probation time to stay, away from the social worker's eyes. So once her 2 years of probation was over, we were back in the state of California, and she was back with my stepfather, who again began sexually abusing me by the time I was 13. And at this point, I was old enough to realize that my brothers needed my help. My brother, and then my mom had another baby. And so I tried to stay I felt like I was the wife, because I was taking care of all the needs, the house needs, the husband's needs. I know a lot of former foster youth kind of feel that way. And I definitely felt like I was the wife of the house, and so that happened until I was 15, and I ran away at the end of my freshman year. And they didn't know where I was for a little while. And when they did find me, they brought the cops in to remove me. And I told the cops why I'd run away. And because of prior allegations towards my stepfather, they immediately removed me from the home. And then I was taken about 2 hours away from my family, which I couldn't handle, because I was my brother's mom. My two baby brothers needed me and looked up to me. And for some reason, throughout all the abuse that I went through, and I'm kind of just glazing over, they got left with my parents. And so I felt that I needed to do everything to be near them, to protect them. So long story short, I was gone a summer, and then I was put back in the town near my brothers. I was put into a foster home that was the president out here where I live. And she was just as abusive as other foster homes I had been in. And I turned her in and let the social workers know what was going on. And at this point, she then was saying, oh, well, she doesn't listen. She runs away. She breaks out of the house at night. I'm pretty sure, doing drugs. And at that point, there had been no complaint against my behavior to the social workers. And I wasn't doing any of that. I was the foster kid that did everything and anything to be enough and to be loved and to make sure you weren't going to want to remove me, So I wasn't breaking out at night. If I left with my boyfriend at the time, I had permission to leave with him. But all of a sudden that stuff was being said because I had told social services what was going on. And so they wanted to remove me from her care, but they were going to take me down to another group home, because as we know, it's really hard to place teens. And so at this point, I'm 15, no home. And I was a part of a flag team at my high school. And I used the high school phone, and I called my flag mom, and I said, will you be my foster mom? Will you take me in? And her husband, they got their training done in a week, and I was within their home within a week from this other home, carrying the typical black trash bag, The 17th of this week was 25 years ago today that I got placed in their home. Um, and I couldn't have been more blessed. Uh, I ended up graduating the foster care system for other reasons, but I stayed with them and they ended up adopting me when I was 21, because I didn't want my biological family to have any rights to my now children. And they happened to all live near. So I wanted to make sure I was protecting my biological kids. While I was going through all that, I had a beautiful little girl at the age of 16. And I I was a typical kid. You asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. It wasn't, be a nurse or be a cop or, be a singer. I wanted to be a better mom than my mom. And that was my goal. So when I got pregnant with her, I knew I was going to give this little girl the world. I was going to finish school and I wasn't going to work in a typical industry workforce. I was going to make sure that I started doing what I love so I could provide for her. And so, with my parents' support, with my extended family support on on her dad's side of the family, I was able to finish high school um, with an excellent grade point average, and I started college my senior year for early childhood education. Um, and that kind of took me down the road of that has been the work field that I have been in. Over time, I ended up marrying my daughter's dad, but we did get divorced where we co-parent really well. He's a really good friend of mine. But I had remarried, and when I remarried, we went into foster care, and we went with a really good agency. I won't name names, but we went into an excellent agency out here, had a really good experience. But California state standards is you're not allowed to have more than 6 children, even if like biological counts with foster care. So we had gotten pregnant with our 6th child while we had a foster placement. So once he went home, we had to close out our license for a little bit, reopened it, and had a beautiful young lady for a little bit in our home. And then we just haven't done foster care since then. There's been a lot of growth. That was back in 2018. I'm a director of a preschool. And during that time, I was the typical person that wanted to help and be a foster parent because I went through foster care and I know we need good homes. That's why I was doing it. Well, during all this time, you don't hear a lot about my dad because I never really got to meet my biological dad. I didn't know where he was. My biological mom wouldn't let me know where he was. And this past year, I found him through doing the DNA ancestry blood test. And what that has done is it's really rocked my world. There's some really injustice done within the court systems. My dad tried to get me, like I had said back in when I was 2, 3 years old, when my aunt was trying to adopt me. He was told he wasn't my father, even though the DNA says he was. And they never reached out to my dad. My dad never moved. My dad never moved. He was always in the same place for the 40 years until I found him. I'm 40. I found my dad. He still had the same address. There was no reason that the court shouldn't have reached out to him every time I was being placed in group homes and foster homes. My dad and my aunt and my grandma had all thought after my mom took off with me from New York that I had been adopted after that situation. Like my aunt had adopted me. They didn't know my mom got custody of me. And so they thought I was adopted. And so it's kind of really made me aware of the system. It made me even more passionate about helping our former foster youth and our current foster youth being able to know what tools they have, know that they can ask to look at their files at the age of 13, 14, depending on the state. They have every right to see their information. It's a part of them. It's a part of who they are. And no child should graduate the system at the age of 18 without those papers in hand. because it could have a lot of important information about family that wanted them or were thinking about them that they had no idea about. So it that has started a fire in me to be able to be peer support, to be able to believe in these children in a way that a lot of them don't have. They don't believe in themselves because nobody believes in them, So that's currently where I'm at right now. How can I make a difference to help refine these children in a way that they know that they are capable of reaching whatever their dreams are?
Wow. I'm just was over here taking notes, as I was listening, because you have, such a beautiful story, if I may say, you know,
Yeah.
and most people are like, beautiful story. She went through the woodworks. What do you mean? Well, as another person with lived experience, just to hear the triumph, even though there were so many different obstacles, so many different barriers, so many different, mental blocks, I'm sure, you still had the tenacity to be a model case, for those social workers out there, a model youth, to try to show that, hey, like, at the end of the day, I don't know what they talking about. I'm doing what I got to do, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to make it out of here, With that being said, I want to break some of this up because you gave me the whole timeline, and I'm walking a little bit back if you don't mind.
That's okay.
Um, and I want to start, you said at around age 1 was your first initial removal.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you remember anything around that time, but I'm
It
a bump.
wasn't, that wasn't a removal, that was my mom going to my aunt and lying to her. My aunt couldn't have any kids at the
Uh,
time, and she told my aunt she had cancer,
hmm,
so that she could go trucking. If you hear a lot of bitterness towards my mom right now, I am working through some of that because of new information that I've gotten recently that
okay.
I know that I need to forgive her, but right now it's a process. Because there was a lot of information that she said, "Oh, I don't know," you know. And so she went to my aunt and gave me up. I don't remember that, but I do remember living with my aunt. I do remember feeling loved. I do remember screaming and holding on tight to the trees as my mom had visits because they were trying to get me reacclimated with her. The court system was. Um, I remember break dancing at Disneyland with my cousins, with my aunt. So and I was little. It was a very few short years, but she was the beginning of having somebody love me, to believe in me, to mold me who I am.
So at an early age, is it fair to say, even though you had a rocky start to life, you also had a sense of I'm quoting my fingers because
Yeah.
quote unquote normalcy of family. So you still have that, even though you had some dysfunction, you had some stability. You know, um, okay,
That
okay.
yeah, that few years I was with my aunt, it was definitely family. I'm still my aunt's sister-in-law is still talking to me as her niece. And she hasn't been really my aunt since I was 3. And
Mhm.
so it's just the wholeness in that family. They love and they love hard. So
Beautiful.
I didn't talk to them after I left them. I didn't know where they were or talk to them until my oldest daughter, I want to say, was 4 or 5. So that would have made me like 22. So almost 20 years before I was reconnected with them again.
Wow, wow. I love that. It sucks to hear the other side of it, but also I'm a firm believer, things happen in life for a reason,
Right.
and we see through your path, you've been able to pour out what you have experienced into others, and helping them. It sucks that you had to go through it, but I'm a firm believer, within my own faith, that God gives each individual person their own story to be able to help
Right.
someone else. um I want to, speed a little bit down this timeline, and I'm at um 10, yeah, age 10. Mom tried to get you back, and they transitioned you to like a foster home, another group home, to kind of get a sense of, okay, this is what it's going to look like when you're back at home. But obviously, something went wrong. Like they got it completely messed up, because you got abused in that home. And I guess, in that time, I guess my question is, were they aware of the abuse before that transition? Because how do you transition someone out of care, having been in an abusive situation? So that's trauma going back to,
Trauma.
yeah, pretty much,
So recently, okay, when I tell you this has been mind-blowing year, it's been a mind-blowing year. I found my dad. Then I find out my mom knew where my dad was the entire time. My mom has since passed, so I can't even talk to her about this stuff. And then my dad's denied me. He doesn't want to meet me. Sorry. So that's been a lot. But out of that, I found my aunt, my uncle. They're beautiful people on my dad's side of the family that I can't wait to meet. And I found who I am and the wholeness of who Christ has built me to be. So then one night I'm looking, I was in LA County and San Bernardino County. I only have my placement packet for San Bernardino County, where I stayed. One of my social workers worked on that for me before I left the system. And I found that one night and I was like, we've got, Facebook. So I put in my group home that I've always wanted to find because it was such a beautiful experience. And sure enough, there was 300 and I think like 95, and now I'm 396 members. And I tell you, within 45 minutes, I had counselor after counselor after counselor reaching out and telling me, I remember you. They have, up until then, maybe 5 pictures from my child youth. And now I have 40 plus pictures because these counselors kept them for 30 plus years. So when I left there, when I tell you I had mental dreams of being tied down to my bed so they couldn't take me, it was traumatizing. They moved me into this home, and she had adopted 2 other kids, and it was a 2-story home. The foster kids were made to stay downstairs, and on Saturday mornings, if you came up, you were not allowed. You got hit, and you had to stand in the corner, even if you're just going up to tell them you were hungry. I remember one night, she had me alone in my room, and I was scared. I had never had a room by myself at that point. And so all the 3 girls and we all slept in like bunk beds in separate rooms. But that night we had decided we were going to have like a slumber party. I got in trouble for that. As you know, Michael, a lot of kids that go through the system at that age can still pee the bed because of obvious trauma. I peed the bed, I was punished, and I was hit for it. It was not a good home. Come to find out, some of my foster counselors came and see me while I was in the home, to check on me because they knew how much I didn't want to leave. And they said they left there with a very sickening feeling, like they couldn't pinpoint it. But they knew the spirit had left that was within me at the group home. I can tell you now, I've learned in this past year that God has never left my side. It was around that age that I was talking to him and I knew who he was. And he put those people in my life to pour into me so that I could be who I am today. Because I had a grounding at the age of 10 that no 10-year-old should have. That was one of the hardest times. And like you said, I went to the foster home. Yeah, she prepped me. She prepped me for to be abused again. And we can laugh at that and we can think it, but yeah, I just went from,
wow.
Yeah, when I'm talking to you, I'm realizing I had a couple of chunks of life with my aunt really good. And then I went to abusive and foster care and, all that with my mom. Then I got 2 years in the group home that were really good. And then until I was 15. I went back with my mom, and it just got worse. I touch on my stepfather and the abuse that he did to me, but the
Mhm.
abuse wasn't only done by him. Like,
Right.
I was abused by several different men in my life. Um,
Before
it
you
wasn't
touch
because,
on before you touch on that, um, from this window from 10 to 13, 13 you go back with mom, you mentioned.
I
Or
went back to her. So they took me when I was 10. I was back to my mom by the time I was 11. They didn't leave me in that
okay.
foster.
By the time you're 11. Okay, so walk me through 11 to 13.
So I roll into my town. I live in the desert SoCal. And I literally see the tumbleweeds that you think roll across the highways out here. Yeah, there were some.
Yeah,
And there was
I'm
like
laughing because
mobility.
we had a joke about this during this trade in, and I was wondering if it snowed and all this other stuff. But you
Yeah,
had to be
no,
there.
it snows every once in a while, and I was just like, what the heck? What did I just roll up on? Um, and immediately, so we lived down in town. I still currently live in the town that I was brought to. But I lived down in town at that point, and my mom would like leave all the time. And when I went back, it was the typical, I gotta treat her right because I know that she'll speak up if I don't at first. So it was all right at that point. There was a lot of men coming and going. My mom never believed in herself. She always believed in men. Um, so I was trying to take care of my one brother that I had at that point. She'd leave at night. And then within, I want to say, I've tried to break this timeline down by remembering what grade I was in at that point. And so at that point, I was in fifth grade. Um, so she may not have got me back until I was about 12. It's just really gray area of how long you're in one place to go to the next. And only if you've been in foster care do you understand that. Um, but I know I was in fifth grade when I returned to her. I finished fourth grade when I was in the group home and in Big Bear. But I want to say by the end of fifth grade, we were packing up. My mom was notorious for just leaving and packing up and going. And so we did that with a gentleman, a mechanic in town, and we moved to Texas. We stayed there for a little bit. She left the guy because he was abusive. We moved in with another guy, and then we left that guy and went back to the other guy and moved to Arkansas with him. Um, and while we were there, and when I say this man was abusive, it was bad. Nothing a kid should see done to their mom, nor my baby brother. Um, and so he didn't abuse me. My mom didn't abuse me. It was abuse being done around us to my
Mhm.
mom. Um, and so one day I'm coming home from school. We have this house, the typical scary house out in the woods. We were living out in the woods in Arkansas, and walking down the dirt road, and I come in my home and I see the typical cigarette on the other side of the fridge. And what I mean by that is when I was really little, when mom first got me back, I would steal food because she wouldn't feed me. That was part of the neglect. And her or my stepfather would sit on the other side of the fridge with that burning cigarette, waiting to catch us. And so when I walked in the house, it scared me because all of a sudden this man was back in my home. But this man hadn't abused me since I was 6. And he's telling me he wants to take my mom from her abuser. And so here's my mom going, can we leave? Can we go with him? I want to leave and go back and live in California. So at this point, she's at the end of her 2-year probation. I'm almost through 6th grade. I know I was done with 6th grade because when I got back out to California, I was in 7th. And so, what do you do? That's no 13-year-old should have to make the choice. Do you go back to your abuser, or do you continue to watch your mom being beat the crap out of. Like, he just didn't care. And so I made the choice that it was okay, and she promised me I wouldn't be hurt again, you know, but she needed out of that situation. So what do we do in the middle of the night again? We pack up. And when I tell you, Michael, that we're like packing up and leaving, this is us laying in the back of a Nova, hiding to sleep and to hide from, like, this isn't just, oh, get in the car, y'all comfy, you got all your stuff packed in a trailer. No, this is grab what you can grab, get in the car, get on the CB radio, see what truckers will help you. Like, it was bad. And I was talking to my husband recently, and she used to let me ride with truckers. They would feed us dinner, and then only I would ride with them. I don't know if I've blocked out stuff that happened during that time. So my husband's like, you don't let your like 11, 12-year-old on the way to places and then on the way back from places ride with truckers. You don't do that. But I distinctly remember getting in the back of semis after truckers would feed us. So, that's just something recently. When you go through foster care, there's stuff that you don't even, I may die not knowing everything, putting the pieces
Mhm.
together. It was a very hard time just saying it to you and realizing we're just talking between the ages of 11 and 13. That's what happened during that chunk of time.
So I want to quick, because as we're speaking, I know you're remembering things and stuff like that, and I just want to clarify for the
Yeah.
audience that's listening.
Yeah.
Like I said, and in some of the posts I've made, this platform is here, to inform people, to educate people, but also a place for people to heal too, and just to and
Mhm.
embody that, I'm hoping, people understand that, because I don't want someone to get the wrong idea by, hearing that you're crying, and different things like that. I want to take a time to mention that, on this platform, you're going to hear some of that,
Yeah.
it may be tough for you, but this is the reality,
Mhm.
and I'm here to share all sides, not just the beautiful, the flowers and the lilies,
Right.
child was there, but the raw, the dirty, the ugly, because how do we get to a place of change without seeing all sides of it and making that known? But one thing you mentioned, and if you don't mind me
No,
asking,
you're
because
good.
you mentioned that after the truckers would feed you, your mom would tell you or direct you to get in the car by yourself with
Mhm.
these. So in some way, by me hearing that, some way you were being trafficked, throughout
And I
that circumstance.
literally, no kidding you, you probably the third person I've talked about it. It's not been a part of my testimony because I've just put that together. I
Mm-hmm.
just thought like it was my mom being nice, like letting me go ride. All I remember is getting in the back of the trucks
Mm-hmm.
after having
Wow.
meal. And I don't even remember getting out of the trucks. That's how bad it is. So, by God's grace, maybe He's blocked anything that could have happened. Hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
nothing did happen. Um, but that all happened by the time I was moving back when I was 13. I got here around the time I was 13. I had my 13th birthday in the trailer park out here and was in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm. And it's really, I I only can imagine from my adult experience working as a paramedic and having to use a CB radio and what have you. But I can't even imagine and trying to leave somewhere because I only can recollect from my movies, from my movie knowledge and memory of what the desert looks like and everything like that. I can only imagine late at night, only one highway, between the stretch of whatever town to whatever, and trying to leave a domestic violence situation, and the only way is a radio that pretty much if you somebody else is listening, they can hear. You
Right.
know,
She utilized it from everywhere from getting us meals to selling stuff to get gas money, and obviously, possibly selling her kids. Which in my mom's defense, and I'm not trying to defend her, but she's gone
mhm,
now. She can't speak for herself.
mhm,
She didn't have any better of an upbringing. My mom thought she was doing what she was being a better parent, just like my goal is striving to be. She was doing the same. I never had to be homeless,
And
so that was one. I'm
in that training we've recently went, that
right,
survival. That's a your
right.
mom never got out of that survival mindset. That was her default, and the only way she knew how to take care of you guys was in that mindset, that survival. I need
Yeah,
me
right.
to do what's necessary, and it may seem wrong to so many other people, but also, as a person with lived experience, understanding my own mom, and my dad, only way that I can recollect to a place of understanding and acceptance is understanding that they did not have the tools to be a parent. Granted, there's no perfect guide to parenthood or what have you, but there's certain tools that you get growing up with a stable parent that has a foundation that if you don't have those things, you tend to use what society gives you. And
Yeah.
society doesn't do the best thing of providing a nurturing parenting setting. It's kind of, you got to do what you got to do, and it is what it is.
Fly by
And
the seat of your pants.
yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of what we see today of what people who've came out of the systems had parents that, it was generational.
Oh yeah, no, I am the first generation. I think we can go many generations back that hasn't been used drugs, that hasn't been an alcoholic, that hasn't, had her children taken away or abused. I've broken the cycle,
Wow.
and that's huge.
I want to navigate a little bit forward
Okay.
because you talked about, and I know this may be a little bit deep, you talked about being parentified, but being parentified in a how do I say this? In a way that you felt that you were the woman of the house because you were taking care of, I believe it was your stepdad,
hmm
taking care, essentially probably your mom too, and your brothers. And I want to highlight this and uplift this, carefully, because I know so many other people that I've talked to that haven't came on here because they're still in the process of dealing
Right.
with what they had to be through.
And
You
what I
know,
will say, before I share, I'm sorry, cut you off. Go
no,
ahead.
you go ahead. Go ahead.
Before I share about being parentified, this could be a trigger warning, so please don't listen if you can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say that. I just have to say that before I say this. So when we got back to the state of California, my stepfather held himself together long enough to wait until my baby brother was born. Once he was born, we kind of live in a small town, so any ICUs or anything at that point are down below. They still are. They're an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
So he was born early. And that's when the sexual abuse began again. And I say this because for the longest time, I thought I was to blame for the abuse that happened to me, when really I was raised up and trained to believe it was normal. So I'm sharing this because anybody that listens, I want you to know that when you're a victim, you're a victim. You have no blame in anything that has happened to you, no matter what was given to you, no matter how you were approached, no matter, want to get into the real, no matter how it felt being touched, because those, God gives us those hormones in our body because it's supposed to be with a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. But when you're taken advantage of at a young age and shown things that you shouldn't be shown, that are X-rated, while it's happening, it can do stuff to you mentally that makes you feel like you were a part of something when you were being sexually abused. So that's why I said it needs a trigger warning, because it's deep. That's how he began doing it to me again. He literally put X-rated stuff on the TV, and started heavy petting, and then, going from there. Showed me that he had been recording me while I was in the shower. And just took it down to a road to the point, we weren't abused. We were fed just enough because, again, like I said before, they were worried I'd say something. So they made sure that I was fed. They crossed their T's and dot their I's over everything they thought. So if I wanted some money, it was he gave me money after he abused me. And for the longest time, I blamed myself, and I couldn't say this to anybody. For the longest time, my first husband was the only person that knew any of that, because I felt that I accepted the abuse that I went through, and I was the reason that I was abused, because I got $2 literally to get a snack at school, or a bowl of cereal, or a bowl of ice cream. The things that my children live day in and day out and get for no reason other than I want to provide it for them, was utilized to sexually abuse me. So it was really hard. And I want to say right now, that was probably the biggest, most mental thing that I've had to overcome. If you had talked to me 10 years ago, Michael, I couldn't share that. But I just want any person to know, I don't care the age, it is never the victim's fault. No matter if you get $2 or you get a mansion out of whatever abuse you may be going through, it's never your fault.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I know that may have been a little bit difficult, I believe somebody needed to hear that. I work with a lot of young ladies coming out and aging out, and I see a lot of promiscuous behaviors between them, and I know, through hearing their stories, and not just assuming that I know, that is a side effect of what they've been through, and that's what they
Yeah.
feel is the only way,
Well,
because
you get to the extreme that if I say yes, then it's okay. And I went to the extreme. I've only been with 2 people. I mean, part of that is my relationship with God. Been with my first husband and my second husband. But guess what? I get to say, and then you get to the extreme. Well, at least if I get to say, then these relationships I'm choosing to be in, and it becomes very unhealthy.
Yeah.
But you could either go either way, or you could go the way that you don't do it at all.
Right. Definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. And I hope that, some of the audience listening, or some, foster parents, caseworkers, could share this to some of those individuals that may be experiencing some hard times with that,
Yeah.
My next question, is kind of navigating, a little bit into your adulthood. And these He's probably gonna be like, I'm tired of you, Michael. But
No,
I really was looking forward to having this conversation with you, because I know, you've been through it, but also you've overcome so much, through it all, those really tough moments, and like we spoke about, the abuse, the mental weight that it has weighed on you. You talked about relationships. How are you able to navigate relationships in your adult life past, the abuse, and to the place that you are now,
God. He has guided me and molded me in a way that only people that understand, that have a personal relationship with him, can really grasp. There has been moments, and everybody has these moments, whether you have a heart upbringing or not, that you make a choice of, going down the wrong path. And that includes personal relationships with people. And he closes those doors. I listen to his guidance, and sometimes I don't. And we take the long way around the mountain, or we crash into the mountain and pick up the pieces and climb on up over it in his plan and his will as he refines us. And he has been, I mentioned that I did divorce my first husband. Um, that was hard at the time. I still love him. He's the father of my kids. It's just a
Mhm.
different type of love. Um, but that's a perfect example. He took that relationship between him and I, and we've been able to build a beautiful relationship for our two children that normally you wouldn't find in co-parenting. When two people divorce, kids are usually divided, where we choose to come together. Well, Carolyn, how can you spend holidays with your ex-husband? Because my kids didn't ask for us to be divorced, and my kids call him uncle, and so um only God can mold me in a way that I can overcome those obstacles that some people may not want to face anymore. Um, and there's been relationships that I've had to close doors on that have been really hard. And then there's been beautiful relationships that have just blossomed and bloomed because of what I've went through. I mean, I'm looking at you, several months ago, I didn't know River Jordan would bring me somebody I could talk to, here and there. So it's nice. Up until River Jordan, I didn't know many foster youth. And we're our own family in a way.
Mhm.
There's only stuff you and I can talk about that nobody else would understand.
Definitely.
So that's what I mean. He puts those people in your life. He knew what I needed this year with everything I've been through. I've only touched on it a little bit. It's been a rough year.
Mhm.
Um, and so I he's taken seeds that have blossomed into big flower fields in my life. And some of those flowers are growing on other hills that I'm no longer a part of.
Definitely. I'll have a couple more questions for you.
Okay,
I
you're good.
only have a
You're
couple
good.
more. And I just want to, thank you, take a moment to thank you for just your vulnerability and your openness, and sharing. I truly appreciate it. And I'm honored, that you would do this with me, and with my audience and what have you. Truly hope that you guys listening take heed to some of this, you know. It's truly like I talk to so many different people, and you hear these different experiences, but I really hope that you guys don't just listen and just let it fly off your ears. Truly, these are gems about life that you can take in and make something out of it, whether it be something that you take in for your personal life or something that you take in to translate to somebody else, or start the conversation about what happens in child welfare. How can I help? How can I be a support? So my next question for you is, you went through a lot. It's fair to say, went through a lot too, and I'm not gonna get over this. The CV radio thing is really getting me. It's really getting me, because I just I'm just imagining this wide desert. Look, pray for me, y'all. What walk me through mental health? What did that look like for you navigating your experience to adulthood? I know you talk about spirituality and your
Yeah.
faith coming in, at the age of 10. And I know it's been some growth from 10 to now within that too. What has mental health or self-care, how did that look like as you've navigated life?
I have always believed in myself. I knew I was my only person in my corner when I didn't understand that God was in my corner.
Hmm.
Even though I talk to him, there's just a different entity of truly understanding that he is with you. I always knew that I was the creator of my future, but really it's God created my future. But when I was little, I knew my choices in life led to results of my future. So that's why I tell you, I cross my T's and I dot my I's. If you need the floor swept, I was going to sweep it, and then I was going to get the mop and the bucket and clean it up. I wasn't going to give you a reason to make my mental health any worse. So I've done a lot of giving, which has strained me and drained me at times, because I'm always so busy about, especially when I was younger, busy about making sure that I did enough for everybody else around me, while I was that drained balloon, barely floating, barely making it. It's got a little bit of helium left. And then Christ would just like fill me back up, and there's been times that I have felt like that balloon was going to burst, because I haven't touched on my kids. I have 7 beautiful children ranging from 3 to 23. And we almost lost one when he was a baby, very close. Just not the right medical diagnosis and not catching on soon enough. And then in 2018, my 14-year-old had open heart surgery. So that's just a little bit of what my kids have been through. There's been a lot of surgeries in this household, with children that you never want to go through as a parent. And I've kind of touched, anywhere from GI surgery to stomach surgery to craniofacial surgery to open heart surgery. So we've been through a lot. And in all that, there has been times that I've just felt broken, that, whether it be finances or a home, or, current season is moving from director to teacher. It is mentally draining, but acknowledging that has in a different way as I've grown older. When I'm younger, it feels helpless. Now I have my spiritual family that comes alongside me and reminds me, and sends those verses or sends those prayers and prays with me. It's just a different mental capacity. The things you're going through are still hard, but I've learned that even more so to lean into the Lord, which has helped bring me through those times.
Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. I truly couldn't. I'm truly inspired, by your story. And I said this many of times, but I truly mean it when I say it every time. Like you are one of the individuals that I watch, as I've met you, watch and take in, because I know you've been through, many tests and trials, but I know you haven't been through those things for no reason,
Right.
And each and everything that you've been through is something that you could have overcome, and have overcome, and it was put on you for a reason, So I'm just taking notes. I'm like, no, she went through that with her kid. Let me take some notes on that. I get ready. I can know who to call, what's going on, and how I can get through it myself. Over here, like, what verse did you read then? What verse was that? You said Roman. All right.
I was gonna say recently, I have a verse I have saved. Where is it? I was on my phone, but the one I've been leaning on right now is, don't lean on the things of this earth, but lean on things above. So don't walk in the trials of this earth expecting to get answers from here and now. Lean into Christ, because that's what's going to see me through anything. And nothing can be more clear than being a 40-year-old woman being rejected by your biological dad, and then months later finding a group home that never forgot about you, of many different beautiful people, and remembering they all told me, you were this beautiful, stubborn, energetic, happy girl, and we didn't know how you could be so happy with everything that you had been through. And to know that I was still that person then that I am now, and I am that because of who God placed in my life, I can't be of the things of this world, because if I am, I would be broken. But if I'm of the Lord and lean on the refinement of his love and his grace and his faithfulness and his strength, that is why I am who I am through all the trials that I've been through. And I just hope that if just one person listens to this, that they know, like, they are their biggest. You can be your biggest, your biggest enemy, or you can be your biggest, you know, person supporter. It's all how much you believe in yourself. And that's why I am so passionate about getting involved with current foster youth and former foster youth, so that they have somebody in their court that believe in them, because I couldn't have done it without my parents. I talk of the Lord, but my parents that ended up adopting when I was 21, they helped refine that. They believed in me even when I got pregnant with my baby at 16. They got, literally, the day that I found out I was pregnant, the social worker said, "When do you want me to pick her up and take her down to a group home?" And I'm like, wait, she made a mistake. We don't want her removed.
Mhm.
So I have natural consequences that come from that. And that made me realize, like, how much God's love is. That's God's grace and God's love that poured through my foster parents. And so now my parents, so that's what every child deserves, is somebody believing in them, that even past their trials and choices that they may not be, that they believe in themselves because somebody has believed in them.
Definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. Only have two more things for you, and just as a recap, you talked about your experience and all that you endured, through your adolescence, and to your, adulthood, and all the different all the different life struggles that you have to navigate, through your own trauma, and having to start a process of recovery, through that, and experience being parentified, experience, sexual abuse, physical abuse, experience, um, having to steal food to just live, and stuff like that. And being scapegoated, but also trying to be that model child, so no one would say that you have done any wrong, you know. And then, going from there to going into adulthood, going to college, you know, going through all these hurdles, being a mom, and enjoying your family, building strong relationships, out of some that have broken, but still, taking the time to mend those fences and being able to co-parent. I think that's a reward in itself, because you don't see that a lot. You really don't, and then remarrying, and being able to provide a consistent, stable foundation for your children and for yourself, and that shows a lot about your character and who you are, and it's truly genuine to your heart, and that's something that I can appreciate. And as I'm saying all this, I hope you appreciate about yourself as well.
Thank you.
My uh last thing is, what advice would you like to leave here?
Remember that you're your biggest hurdle. You may have everybody in the stands to help you get through your trials, or you may have nobody. Believe in yourself. No matter what trials your way, you're your biggest hurdle.
I love that. I love that. Any last comments?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on here. And, my name's going to be on this podcast. So any former foster youth, anybody that I could help, I don't mind them reaching out. I'm at a place that I can share my story fully, and it may come with a few tears, but I am definitely in a mental state that I'm ready to help make a difference, whatever that may be. So
Love
thank you
that.
for having me on your show.
No, thank you for
Or your
being on.
podcast.
Um, thank you for being on. And something that it just comes to my mind, a scripture that helped me get through all that I went through. I remember reading it in juvenile and reading it through being in group homes and facilities. And I'm drawing a blank. I know it's in Matthew, but I'm drawing a blank what specific verse and chapter, but it was which today is, tomorrow is cast into the oven. And for me, I remember meditating on those few words and just, okay, what does this mean? Like it tripped me out for the beginning. What does this mean? And then as I grew and as things start happening, it started to come to me that, things that we ask for, you know,
Right.
we may not be ready for it. We may not be in the season for it yet, and we may need to do a little bit more marinating, in the refrigerator, before we can touch the stove. And when we're ready, it comes out of that oven fresh, smelling good. We look good and what have you. And I think about that when you talk about your dad, and I know it's fairly new. I truly believe that everything happens in its timing, and unfortunately your dad denied you, but God gave you
God
another
didn't.
family that was always waiting for you to reconnect, and it was all those different people that had those pictures and were waiting to. I know she's still out there somewhere, so
Yeah.
I just think about moments like that, so for you guys that's listening, whether you're spiritual or not, it's something that you can take heed in, and just think about what today is, tomorrow's cast into the oven. So things that you are working on right now, it doesn't mean because you're not getting it, because you're not reaping the benefits of it, because it's just seem like the world is turning upside down. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. You continue to be persistent, you continue to have resiliency, you continue to learn from what is happening currently, and to put your best foot forward. I promise you, the grass will be greener on the other side. With that being said, um, we've talked about a lot in this episode. We've dove deep into some hard topics, but some much needed topics that need to be lifted up. And I truly appreciate you for allowing me to lift those topics up. And I just want to say, if anyone, was triggered, or something, stumped you or what have you, please, take some time to get yourself centered, do some self-care, do some
Yes.
mindfulness exercises. If it's something that was thought-provoking, and you didn't realize it's something that you've been through, something that triggered you from your own lived experience, I do ask, don't sit on that, talk to a friend, talk to a family member, talk to, a counselor, seek out that help, to navigate that process as those memories probably come back flooding. Also know that I'm here. Caroline said that she's here. Reach out to either one of us. We would love to talk to you and navigate you, help you navigate through that process. I've been through it. It's not pretty, dealing with it by yourself. But we live in a day and age where we have alumni that are willing to be a village, for each and every one of us. Also, with that being said, cold and flu season is out there. Please take care of yourself. Please, a lot has happened with COVID and, all these different sicknesses coming up. If you got to throw that mask back on, throw that mask back on. Get the little bit of bottle hand sanitizer, carry it with you. Just take care of yourself. We all are a part of this big, great nation. It's a big village, and we all are neighbors to one another. So about one person taking care of themselves, we all are taking care of each other. With that being said, I truly enjoyed this episode. And I'm truly excited to see what conversations come out of this. So thank you guys for listening. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 22 of season 2. I'm at like 70 something episodes, getting ready to end season 2. at the end of December. I'm going to be taking, this movement of resilient voices and beyond, and, taking it into the communities, taking it into those, in-person, connections and networks, to be able to bridge in some of the gaps and the disparities that we see within our system. And just stay tuned. You guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to this. Thank you guys for listening. Talk to you guys soon.